Every nation has a story it tells about itself. America's story is one of democracy, of accountability, of a system built specifically to ensure that no single man could ever place himself above the law. But what if that story has a chapter so dark, so deliberately buried, that the people responsible for burying it are the same people history remembers as heroes? What if the most corrupt presidency in American history was not run by a villain the textbooks warned you about, but by a man whose face is carved into the side of a mountain? This is the story of Warren G. Harding, and what happened inside the White House between 1921 and 1923 was so catastrophic, so breathtakingly corrupt, that it took America decades to fully understand what had been done to it. Warren Harding was elected in 1920 by one of the largest margins in American electoral history. He was handsome, charming. He looked like a president straight from central casting. He promised a return to normalcy after the trauma of World War I. The American people loved him. The press adored him. And the men around him, the men he brought with him into the most powerful building in the world, saw that love and that trust and that open, generous nature, and they used it to steal everything that was not bolted to the floor. The scandal that defines the Harding presidency is called Teapot Dome. You probably know it only as a name, a distant footnote. But Teapot Dome was not a footnote. It was the systematic looting of the United States government by men placed in positions of sacred public trust. The US Navy had oil reserves set aside for national security, emergency fuel for warships, strategic reserves outside the reach of commercial interests. Harding's Interior Secretary, Albert Fall, secretly transferred control of those reserves to his own department, then leased them, illegally, secretly, in exchange for cash delivered in black bags to private oil companies. Fall became the first serving cabinet member in American history to go to prison for crimes committed in office. But Fall was not the only one. Harding's Attorney General ran what investigators described as a criminal enterprise from the Department of Justice itself. The Veterans Bureau defrauded disabled war veterans out of an estimated $200 million, stolen from men who had come home broken from World War I by a man Harding personally trusted. That man fled the country when investigations began. He was caught, tried, imprisoned. Another Harding associate was found dead of a gunshot wound to the head. The official ruling was suicide. Those who knew him were not convinced. But here is what makes Harding's story truly extraordinary. He was not a calculating criminal. He was something more dangerous. A man who trusted the wrong people completely, who surrounded himself with friends and assumed, with catastrophic naivety, that the people he liked were also the people he could trust. He called them his friends. History calls them the Ohio Gang. And while Harding played cards and drank whiskey in the White House during Prohibition, the law he was sworn to uphold, his friends were dismantling the integrity of the United States government, one department at a time. Harding died in office in August 1923. Heart failure, officially. He had begun to suspect in the final months of his life that something was deeply wrong, that the men around him had betrayed him, that the presidency he had been so proud of was built on a foundation of theft and fraud and deals made in back rooms that he had not known about and could not now undo. People who saw him in his final weeks described a man visibly collapsing. Not just physically, but in some deeper, more essential way. A man who had discovered that the life he thought he was living was not the life that was actually being lived around him. His successor quietly managed the fallout. Investigations launched, prosecutions followed. But the full scale took decades to emerge, because the men involved were powerful. Because the institutions investigating them were the same institutions that had been corrupted. The myth of Harding as simply weak and unlucky served everyone's interests. It was tidier than the truth. The truth was that the executive branch of the United States government had been for sale. Openly, systematically, for 2 years. Harding is not the villain American history prefers. He is too sad for that, too human, too much a product of his own blind loyalty. But the damage did not stay in 1923. It echoed into Watergate. Now you know the chapter they buried.